There's a woman I'll never forget. She came into my office about 3 years ago, 62 years old, freshly divorced after 34 years of marriage. She sat down across from me, folded her hands in her lap, and said something that just about broke my heart. She said, "Dr. Kingsley, I spent my whole adult life being the perfect wife. I cooked every meal he liked. I ironed his shirts the way his mother did. I gave up my career, my friends, even my own taste in movies. And you know what he told me the day he left? He said he couldn't even remember what I liked anymore. Neither could I. I've been practicing psychology for over 30 years now, and I can tell you that conversation is one I've had in one form or another hundreds of times. Women in their 50s, 60s, 70s, sometimes 80s, sitting in my office wondering how they became invisible in their own lives, how they gave and gave and gave and ended up with a man who either walked out the door or worse, stayed in the house but treated them like wallpaper. So today I want to talk to you about something I've learned after 3 decades of listening to women's stories. There is a kind of woman who stays unforgettable, not just to the men she's been with, but to herself, to her grandchildren, to her friends, to the grocery store clerk who remembers her name. And here's the thing that's going to surprise you. She's not the prettiest woman in the room. She's not the most agreeable. She's not the one who sacrifices the most. In fact, she's pretty much the exact opposite of what most of us were taught a good woman should be. I've spent years figuring out what makes these women different, and I've narrowed it down to 7 qualities. But before I get into them, I need you to hear me on something. These aren't tricks. These aren't strategies to get a man to notice you or come back to you or propose to you. If that's what you're looking for, you can click away right now because this isn't that kind of talk. What I'm about to share with you is how you become unforgettable to yourself first. The men, the friends, the family, all that follows later, and honestly, it's kind of a side effect. Let's start with the first quality. I call it chosen loyalty. And this is different from what most of us learned loyalty meant. Picture 2 women in their 60s. The first one stays with her husband because she's terrified of being alone. She doesn't think she can handle the bills. She doesn't know how to use the remote control. She's convinced that no one else would ever want her at this age, so she stays. And she's loyal, sure, but it's the loyalty of a woman who feels trapped. Now, picture the second woman. She's got her own bank account. She's got a circle of girlfriends who drop everything for her. She knows how to change a tire, order takeout on her phone, and take herself out to dinner without feeling sorry for herself. She stays with her husband because she wants to. She could leave tomorrow, and part of him knows that, and that's exactly why he brings her coffee in the morning. Can you feel the difference between those 2 women? One is trapped, the other is choosing. And let me tell you, choice is magnetic in a way that dependency never will be. This goes for men, for friendships, for adult children who take you for granted. The moment people sense that you are with them by choice, not by need, their whole behavior changes. I've seen marriages that were dead for 20 years come back to life when the wife finally stopped needing her husband and started choosing him. Now here's the catch. You can't fake chosen loyalty. You have to actually build a life that works without him. That means your own money, even a little, your own friends, your own hobbies, your own opinions about the news and the neighbors and where to go for Thanksgiving. A patient of mine once told me, "Dr. Kingsley, the day I realized I'd be okay on my own was the day my husband started looking at me like he did when we were dating." That's not magic, that's math. The second quality I see in unforgettable women is what I call a lit up mind. And before you tell me you're too old for this, or you never finished college, or you're not book smart, let me stop you right there. I'm not talking about degrees, I'm talking about curiosity. That thing that makes you pick up a magazine at the doctor's office and read an article about something you've never heard of. That thing that makes you ask your grandson what he thinks about something instead of just telling him. That thing that makes you say, "Huh, I never thought about it that way," and mean it. We live in a time where most conversations are predictable. People talk about the weather, their back pain, and what was on TV last night. A woman who still asks real questions, who still gets excited about ideas, who still wants to learn, stands out like a lighthouse in the fog. I've got a neighbor who's 78 and teaches herself something new every year. Last year it was watercolor. This year it's the history of the American West. Her husband is 79, and he still looks at her like she hung the moon. You think that's a coincidence. A curious mind isn't a performance. You don't have to quote Shakespeare or know what's happening in Ukraine. You just have to stay interested in the world and in the people in front of you. Read the news, ask your hairdresser about her kids, watch a documentary, try a new recipe. The goal isn't to impress anybody. The goal is to stay awake in your own life. And that alertness shows in your eyes, your voice, the questions you ask. And people, men and women both, are drawn to it like moths to a porch light. The third quality, and this one's close to my heart, is what I call the safe harbor. Now, I want to be really careful here because this one gets misunderstood all the time, especially by women our age who were raised to be caretakers. A safe harbor is not a woman who fixes everybody's problems. A safe harbor is not the woman who listens to her son-in-law complain about her daughter for 3 hours on a Sunday. A safe harbor is not the mother who absorbs every bit of her adult children's stress so they don't have to feel it. Listen to me. That woman isn't a harbor, she's a sponge, and she's going to wring herself out and die tired. A real safe harbor is a woman who has found her own peace, and her presence lets other people put down their armor for a minute. That's completely different. She's not taking on their pain. She's not trying to fix them. She's just so settled in herself that being around her feels like taking a deep breath. You've met women like this. Maybe you had an aunt like this. Maybe a teacher, maybe a friend's mother. You'd walk into their kitchen and just feel yourself relax. They weren't doing anything special. They were just home in themselves, and that let you come home too. Here's how you become that woman. You do your own work. You figure out what makes you anxious and you dress it. You figure out what you're still carrying from your childhood or your first marriage or your mother's criticism, and you put it down. You learn to breathe. You stop reacting to every little thing. And slowly over time, you become a person other people can exhale around. Not because you're taking their weight, because you're not adding to it. The fourth quality is what I call being comfortable in your own skin. And I know, this is hard to hear when your body is not what it was at 30. Believe me, I know I'm looking in the same mirror you are. But here's what I've learned after 30 years of watching women age. The women who are magnetic in their 60s, 70s, 80s are not the ones who had the most work done. They're not the ones who dress like their granddaughters. They're the ones who walk into a room and own it because they've made peace with the body they live in. They move with a kind of ease that younger women don't have yet. They don't tug at their sleeves. They don't suck in their stomachs. They don't apologize for taking up space. I had a patient who came to me at 65, hating her arms, hating her neck, hating the little pouch below her belly button. Every morning she'd stand in front of the mirror and run through a list of everything that was wrong with her before she even had her coffee. I asked her to try something. For 30 days, before the criticism started, she had to thank her body for one thing, just one. Her feet for carrying her hands for holding her grandbabies, her eyes for still working well enough to read. 30 days turned into 90. 90 turned into a year. I ran into her at a farmer's market about 18 months later. Her husband was with her, and he couldn't stop touching her arm. Same body, different woman inside it. That's the whole secret. You don't have to love every inch of yourself. You just have to stop fighting your own reflection. The energy you spend criticizing yourself is the same energy that, redirected, becomes presence. And presence, folks, is attractive at any age. The fifth quality is emotional honesty. This is a hard one for our generation because a lot of us were raised to smile when we were angry, to say we were fine when we weren't, to keep the peace at any cost. I grew up in a house where we didn't talk about feelings. My mother would rather have swallowed a hornet than told my dad she was upset, and a lot of women my age are still living by those rules. But here's what I've learned. A woman who tells the truth about her feelings, kindly and without drama, becomes somebody other people can actually trust. When the people around you know that if something's wrong, you'll say so, and if you say everything's fine, it actually is, they can relax. They stop guessing. They stop walking on eggshells. They stop bracing for the other shoe to drop. Now, emotional honesty does not mean dumping every feeling on every person. It does not mean telling your husband at Thanksgiving dinner about every resentment you've held for 20 years. That's not honesty. That's an ambush. Real emotional honesty is steady. It sounds like, I'm feeling hurt about what you said, and I want to talk about it when you have a minute. It sounds like, no, I don't want to go to that party, and I'd rather not make up an excuse. It sounds like, I love you, but I need an hour to myself right now. If you haven't practiced this, it feels terrifying at first. The first time you tell your grown daughter that you can't babysit this weekend because you need a break, your hands will shake. I promise you, her respect for you will go up, not down. The people worth keeping in your life will adjust. The ones who can't handle you telling the truth were using you anyway. The sixth quality is something I call wise compassion. Now, as older women, we've been trained our whole lives to feel for everybody: our kids, our grandkids, our neighbors, the poor lady on the news, the cashier who seems tired. We carry the weight of the world, and a lot of us are flat worn out from it. Wise compassion is different from that. Wise compassion is when you can feel what another person is going through without taking it on as your own. You can sit with your daughter while she cries about her divorce without coming home and crying yourself for 3 days. You can listen to your husband vent about his health without getting a headache yourself. You can care about the state of the world without doom scrolling the news at midnight. This is a skill, and it took me a long time to learn it. The way I learned it was to start asking myself a simple question when somebody was telling me their troubles. Is this mine to carry? Or am I just being invited to sit next to them while they carry it? 9 times out of 10, people don't actually want you to fix their problem. They want you to be present with them. You can do that without becoming a second person drowning. When you learn the difference, a remarkable thing happens. People want to be around you more, not less, because being in your company is comforting, not draining. They know you care, but they also know you're not going to fall apart. That combination, deep warmth with steady ground, is extraordinarily rare. And it's one of the reasons certain older women become the matriarchs everybody circles around at family gatherings. The seventh quality, and this is the deepest one, is what I call the gift of truly seeing. And this one is worth its weight in gold. Most people go through life feeling a little bit invisible. Men especially. Our husbands, our sons, our brothers. Society tells them to be tough, to have the answers, to handle it, whatever it is. They don't get asked how they're really doing. And when you ask them, and you mean it, and you actually wait for the real answer, something in them just cracks wide open. A woman who can see the man behind the job title, behind the tough guy act, behind the silence at the dinner table, is doing something almost nobody does anymore. She's telling him he's a whole human being, not just a provider, not just a grandfather, not just a retired Marine or a retired accountant or a retired whatever, a person with feelings he never gets to name, with fears he's carried since he was a kid. The same thing is true for your grown children, for your friends, for the mailman, honestly. When you see people, really see them, not as roles in your life, but as full human beings with their own inner worlds, you become the person they remember for the rest of their lives. Not because you said anything special, because you looked at them like they mattered. Now, here's the thing about the seventh quality. You cannot offer it to other people until you've learned to do it for yourself. You have to look in the mirror and see a whole person, not a list of wrinkles and regrets and things that you didn't get around to. You have to see the girl you used to be, the mother you became, the woman you still are. All of her. When you can do that, extending the same kind of seeing to other people becomes natural. So those are the 7. Chosen loyalty, a lit up mind, safe harbor, comfortable in your own skin, emotional honesty, wise compassion, the gift of truly seeing. Now, I need to tell you something important before we wrap up. I can already hear some of you thinking, Dr. Kingsley, this sounds like a lot of work, and I'm 67, and I don't have time for all this. Let me push back on that gently. You have more time than you think. Statistically, if you're in reasonable health at 65, you've got a good 20 years ahead of you. That's not a postscript. That's a whole act. You can waste it being invisible and resentful, or you can use it to become the most interesting version of yourself you've ever been. Your choice. And I'll tell you something else. The women I've seen do this work in their 60s and 70s have outcomes just as powerful as the women who started in their 30s. Sometimes more. Because older women have something younger women don't. You've seen enough to know what matters. You don't have time for nonsense anymore. That clarity is an accelerator. Here's where I want you to start. Not with all 7. Pick one, just one. The one that tugged at you the most while you were listening. Maybe it's emotional honesty, and you're going to practice saying no this week. Maybe it's the lit up mind, and you're going to sign up for a class at the community college or the library. Maybe it's safe harbor, and you're going to finally deal with the anxiety that's been running your life since 1987. Whatever it is, start small. Start messy. Don't wait until you feel ready. We don't become unforgettable women by reading about it. We become unforgettable women by practicing, badly at first, until the new way of being feels like home. And one more thing, you're going to lose some people along the way. I want you to be prepared for that. When you stop being the sponge, the invisible caretaker, the woman who says yes to everything, certain people in your life are going to get mad. They're going to call you selfish. They're going to say you've changed. Let them. The people who got comfortable with the old version of you, the version that was easy to take advantage of, were never your people anyway. The ones who stick around and the new ones who show up, they're the ones worth your golden years. I want to leave you with what the 62-year-old woman I mentioned at the start told me 18 months after she walked into my office that first day. She said, "Dr. Kingsley, I finally figured out what I like. I like strong coffee in a real mug. I like mystery novels. I like my grandson's laugh. I like the quiet in my kitchen at 6 in the morning. And I like who I'm becoming." She met somebody last year for what it's worth, a retired engineer who adores her. But honestly, the look on her face when she said she liked who she was becoming, that was the real love story. That's what I want for all of you. Not a man, not a validation, not even a second chapter. Though those are beautiful when they happen. I want you to become somebody you like spending time with, somebody you're proud to be, somebody your granddaughter watches and thinks, "I want to be like her when I grow up." Because when that happens, everything else, the right people, the right relationships, the right kind of peace, it all finds you. You won't have to chase anything. You'll just have to be home in yourself with the porch light on, and the right ones will walk up the steps. That's the real secret. Not perfection, not youth, not twisting yourself into somebody else's fantasy. Just the slow, stubborn, beautiful work of coming home to who you actually are. You're not too old. You're not too late. You're right on time. And I'm rooting for every single one of you.